Opening words are by Dr. Eddie Glaude, Jr. By now in America, we should have learned that changing laws or putting our faith in politicians to do the right thing are not enough. A version of America is dying. We hear its death rattles, loud and violent. But a new America is desperately trying to be born. We are its midwives. We have the responsibility to imagine America anew. Will we do so, or will we turn our backs once again? Thanks.
Our Unitarian Universalist chalice will now be lit in the sanctuary. If you have your own chalice, please light it now too, and let us know that you've done so by typing in the chat at the bottom of your screen. This morning's chalice words are written by Bill Withers, the writer of Lean on Me. If there is a load you have to bear that you can't carry, I'm right up the road. I'll share your load if you just call me. Please join me now in saying the words to our unison affirmation. Inspired by love, our mission is to seek our true nature, connect deeply and openly, and act for justice.
Good morning, everybody. It's good to see everybody. So today we present our first virtual flower show. It was inspired by the children's book that we will be reading in Children's Chapel today. And the book is called Miss Rumphius. I first discovered this book when my daughter was just 4. As happens with some children and some books, Kate demanded to hear it over and over. The deceptively simple story follows Alice Rumphius through the arc of her life. The story begins with the young girl listening to her immigrant grandfather's stories of faraway places. She declares that she too will travel and then return to live in a home by the sea. Her grandfather likes her idea, but adds that she must also make the world more beautiful. So as the readings with Kate multiplied, instead of becoming tired of the book, I found myself more and more immersed. Alice's journey to make the world more beautiful is touching. The story is a portrait of a rare kind of person, someone with an inner compass who allows herself to be guided by it even when life is not easy. Miss Rumphius models for young people how they can live an intentional life, one in which they imagine a future for themselves and go toward it without fear. Alice Rumphius happened to make the world more beautiful by sprinkling lupin seeds along the coast of Maine. We'll talk in RE about other ways we can make the world more beautiful. But in the meantime, in honor of Miss Rumphius, we present our first virtual flower show.
I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean. Still my dry land heart can sing. I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my balloon. my sail and move my rudder as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on. Greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Blue boat. Low below me, I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean. Still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun my sail and moon my rudder as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home.
guess we're going to do joys and sorrows.
Let us now bear witness to the joys and sorrows experienced in our community. If you have a personally significant joy or sorrow, please type it in the chat and I will read it aloud. Oh, not a problem. Okay, there we go. Hold on. From Allison McKinney. She has a joy. Rode my bicycle over the bridge to Rockland and back. Sorrow. I feel like my legs are about to fall off. From Megan to everyone. Today is Maggie's 3rd birthday. From Pat Krugman. I turned 65 on Monday and I am ready. From Tom Gutman. Lindy's 9th birthday this week. From Shane. Grateful to have gotten to spend time with Monica yesterday. From Monica. It was a joy to spend most of yesterday with my brother and Shane and have our dogs play in their yard while we made s'mores. From Terry Lucan. I miss everyone. It was a joy to connect with you individually through your flowers. Ann Summers. My Ted is marrying Yukon Friday, July 3rd. 6 people, followed by a trip to Whole Foods and a picnic. From Christine Clayton. So many joys here. First, I made it to California and I am here with my mom and sister at a distance and able to move my father on Monday into hospice care. I am here with you through this virtual space. Emily graduated 8th grade last week and she gave another speech as salutatorian. We are so proud. Thanks for the love. From Susie Dugas. Daily morning badminton is so much fun. I hope more people welcome over to play. David Morkel. Thrilled to have Peregrine here with us. From Christine. My father is home after a bout with COVID-19. April Strittmater. Joy. Huge joy for Melody Van Cole. William got to swim and play with Kingsley and Zane this week. He had a great time with them, and I got a few hours to focus on work. From Tom Gutman. From Felix. I am thankful for Camp Quarantine in our neighborhood. From Josiel to everyone. Sorrow. Black folks are still being murdered at alarming rates in this country, especially trans women of color. Honoring them today on Pride, which is only possible because of the work of Black trans folks. Sorry, this is Stephanie. Oh, not Josiel. We also acknowledge all the unspoken joys and sorrows held within the sanctuary of our hearts, and all those who have yet to find a spiritual home where they can share their joys and sorrows. Our first reading for today is by Ta-Nehisi Coates. America begins in the Black plunder and white democracy, 2 features that are not contradictory, but complementary.
Thank you, Jerry. I need to transition us from the beauty of the flower show to today's theme, savage apathy. The essayist Roger Cohen used this term recently in reference to white Americans, and it spoke to me. Sadly, it spoke to me, and violently, it spoke to me. We white Americans are complicit structurally, if not personally, in savage apathy. Let me try owning it. My apathy about the way my country deals with Black Americans is savage. My apathy has savage consequences. I am savage. I supported and support Black plunder and white democracy. Saying all this aloud is extremely uncomfortable for me. I assume it is uncomfortable for you to hear, and to immediately recognize it as brutally 100% accurate. White Americans have happily lived with these juxtapositions. We have constructed narratives to encourage that. I am so angry at the narratives about our white democracy that were foisted upon us as children and as adults. Narratives that encouraged ever so slyly our savage apathy. I'm angry at the establishment that cooked these narratives up and allowed them to fester in our school books, in our holidays, in our collective memories, and in our white American culture, and in our white democracy. Here is a narrative that comes to mind from like one of my earliest memories. The Pilgrims, who invited Native Americans to dinner after the harvest. You know the myth, probably no one knows the real story, and it isn't even important or significant to know the real story. But back to me, I remember cutting out multicolored construction paper as feathers and gluing them to a paper plate to make a turkey, a Thanksgiving holiday decoration. Or was it an Indian headdress? I don't know. Last spring, when a bunch of us read the Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States, I learned that white Americans strongly encouraged everyone to kill Native Americans by advertising a cash payment for every Native American scalp brought in. And who didn't need cash? Another narrative that galls me is the Founding Fathers, who were still on our pedestals. Think of all the biographies of each of them, all the documentaries about them. The implication is how special they are. They need more study and more biographies. We idolize them. I think they were smart people, probably, but they were in the right place at the right time. They were white, they were male, they were educated. They were educated in a location that had very few educated people. I marvel at the scores and scores of biographies of George Washington that are sold, and the biographies of Frederick Douglass that do not. There's a new book coming out, I heard about it last week, by Craig Shirley, entitled, wait for it, Mary Ball Washington, the Mother of George Washington. Really? People are gonna read that instead of the autobiography of Malcolm X, or anything by James Baldwin, or W.B. Du Bois? In first grade, I adored the anecdote that ended with, George Washington could not tell a lie. It takes my breath away to remember how proud of him I was, how perfect that he was my founding father. I hope I'm not boring you. I hope you get my point. And I'm sure you did, however inelegantly I've presented it. But allow me one more narrative. The narrative of the reasons for the Civil War are also galling to me. I'm pretty sure it was all about money. And since a good way to get money is to have power, it was also about power. I don't think it was really about the morality of slavery. The South wanted to maintain not only its current wealth, but they wanted to bring slavery to the new territories opening up in the West. The North was, of course, also benefiting from the wealth of the slave states. And that hasn't been presented enough in our history books, but the bankers knew and the capitalists knew. I read that much. And as a goof, I Googled the 10 poorest states in the United States today. 8 of them were former slave states, and Arkansas was the 9th. And I don't even know offhand if they were a slave state or not. But these formerly very, very wealthy states are still reeling 150 years later from slavery being taken away as the foundation of their economy. So one can see why they insisted on going to war over slavery. It was about money. As Ta-Nehisi Coates said, America begins in Black plunder and white democracy, 2 features that are not contradictory, but complementary. I am proud to point out that this sentence is by Mr. Coates was highlighted last year by the Unitarian Universalist Association in their 2019 Statement of Conscience. Because of these narratives, we, the white Americans, have had a wall built for us by our own white culture, our political culture, our social culture, and by our education system, which has followed suit, in which the grade school curriculums in history, literature, the arts are determined in state capitalists, presumably by traditionalists. Because it takes effort to see over this wall, many of us in America have been unaware that the narratives are flawed. We have been unaware that there are true narratives that were not broached. And many are not broached today, or if they have been, many white Americans haven't let them resonate. So let's hear our second reading from Jerry.
The second reading is by essayist Wesley Morris. This country manufactures only one product powerful enough to interrupt the greatest health and economic crisis it's probably ever faced. We make racism, the American virus and the underlying condition of Black woe. And the rage against it is strong enough to compel people to risk catching one disease in order to combat the other. In scores and scores of American cities and cities around the world, people can perhaps see anew that when it comes to certain white people, what we call freedom is basically impunity. Freedom plus. Americans have watched that plus burn outside their homes. Impunity permits politicians and TV hosts to lie about whatever and the police to shoot rubber bullets at non-protesters as if they were squirrels. Impunity is what brings Black men as different and differently eloquent as the rapper activist Killer Mike and the Princeton professor Dr. Eddie Glaude Jr. to anger and the verge of tears in separate appearances before the media on Friday. They both embodied a sentiment of protests. We've been trying to make this country great, but you just won't let us. Black Americans have come in peace. They've come armed. They've just been trying to mind their business. Disappointment awaits regardless. Anytime the racial temperature goes up and hell pays a visit to earth, the disappointment takes a holiday, and you fight. You fight because you're tired. You're tired because you've been fighting for so long, in waves, in loops, in vacuums, in vain. I suppose this is all how I found myself doubled over the kitchen sink on Sunday, bawling into a bowl of greens, a knife in one hand, the other gathered into the loneliest fist that has ever been made. I was doubled over because Patti LaBelle wrecked me.
Wesley Moore. And there's no one Black American experience. There's a gorgeous mosaic of Black American experiences. But I do want to compensate for the biased narratives that I internalized in my lifetime. I started to do that in my 20s and have done that my whole life, but I'm redoubling my efforts now going forward. And I think it will be a great thing for any of you to join me in my journey of re-education. I'm going to read more thoughts of current Black American thinkers. I know of Eddie Glaude Jr., Cornel West, Jelani Cobb, Toni Morrison, Ta-Nehisi Coates, Colson Whitehead, and I've read some of their words, but not enough. And these are people who have infiltrated the white world, i.e. their books are reviewed in the Sunday New York Times or they appear on MSNBC. So I need to find more. I've always been a big reader of fiction, and I'm proud, or at least glad, that I've read much fiction written by Black Americans. Toni Morrison, of course, Colson Whitehead, Zora Neale Hurston, and Alice Walker, and Terry McMillan, and recently Jacqueline Woodson. I've never read James Baldwin. And we've heard our guest minister, Benjamin Van Dyne, dedicate 2 Sundays to James Baldwin. So that needs to be on my list, or better yet, on my bedstand. I need to add Roxane Gay, James McBride, Jessamine Ward, Claudia Rankine. Jerry Pete recommended The Water Dancer to me last week. Hopefully I can borrow that from you, Jerry, since the libraries are closed. Regarding visual art, if you don't know some of the past greats like Jacob Lawrence and Horace Pippin and Romare Bearden and Faith Ringgold, I'm almost jealous that you get to see them for the first time if you go out and look for them. But I haven't moved much into contemporary Black American painters, and I need to do that for the messages and for the narrative that I need to know. Let me talk about traveling. I've done a pretty good job of this, so let me brag to you, but also share my joy. When I travel in the US, I research the Black American historic sites in whatever city I'm in. I've had some amazing experiences since more often than not, these sites are not funded well and so are very personal. I actually went to a museum of Black Knoxville, Tennessee, only to find out it was in a Black residential district, in a residential house, in the living room and dining room of the woman who owns and runs the museum. I'm not articulate enough to put my thoughts and feelings into words about that experience, but it was just amazing. I had similar experiences in a town halfway between Greensboro, North Carolina, and Raleigh, and also in Columbia, South Carolina. And actually, I have this book. It's called In Their Footsteps. It's literally a travel guide of Black American sites in the US. You can see how thick it is. Let's talk about music. When they were young, my kids would tell me how great all these different Black singers were, many of them rappers. I'd say, oh, you mean like Tupac? And they would just laugh at me for bringing up someone from 30 years ago. I mean, that's how far behind I was. I still am. Loving 60s Motown is just not going to cut it anymore in our world. I did finally listen to and love Michael Jackson. Really, the day he died, I sort of found out about him. People made such a big deal. I thought, maybe I should check this guy out. And, you know, I love him and I love his messages. I need to study Beyonce's album, Lemonade, because when that came out, it was supposed to have some real deep statements, much deeper than the previous stuff. And I need to study the music and lyrics of Kendrick Lamar. He's a Black American singer who won the Pulitzer Prize in 2017 for music. And I don't know a thing he's done. I'm so far behind. Are you? Thank you for listening today. Now let me turn the Zoom screen over to Jerry to speak about our church.
Each week, we make an offering from the bounty we are blessed to enjoy.
Josiel, thank you for such a touching rendition of that song. Reverend Karen Brammer spoke 3 weeks ago here about getting out and protesting, putting your body out there. Benjamin Van Dyne 2 weeks ago called for the abolition of the police. Today, I've asked for something different. I've asked for us to leave behind our savage apathy, to get to know Black Americans in whatever form works for you. How can this not help? I started today with hope, with the opening song, Lean on Me. Because wouldn't it be nice if Black Americans could lean on us, lean on white America to help change our country? For our closing song, I wanted to end with hope and joy. Dave is going to play another video I've selected and invite you to sing along. Here are let me read some of the opening words from the song that I really hope, reflect the time we're in now. There comes a time when we heed a certain call, when the world must come together as one. There are people dying. And it's time to lend a hand to life, the greatest gift of all. We can't go on pretending day by day that someone somewhere will soon make a change. We are the ones. So now I ask Dave to put on We Are the World.